Hi there, and a very warm welcome to Season 6, Episode 29 of People Soup. It's Ross McIntosh here.
Absolutely, especially after that workshop with Sonia Batten in 2006. That was where it started, really growing a lot. So I think if you had met me back in the late 90s, early 2000s, you'd meet a very different person. Like I was really quite rigid and a little bit, certainly my inner voice was pretty toxic, and a process, I think, of which ACT is a strong part, has really helped me to take perspective on that story and to be more open and more open to other people and a bit more connected with people.
Peace Supers. In this episode, you'll get to meet Dr. David Gillanders, who is a chartered clinical psychologist and senior lecturer at the University of Edinburgh. His research programme explores psychological well-being in advanced illness, cancer and persistent health problems. It's the second of a three-parter. Last week I chatted with David's colleague, Anne Finucane, and in the third part I'll talk to both Anne and David about their brilliant website, mygriefmyway.co.uk. In this episode we get to know a bit more about David. He shares his career journey and how he landed in clinical psychology, thanks in part to some advice from a career counsellor. David sets out a series of opportunistic shifts in his career and the profound impact of ACT in both his professional and personal lives. He talks about his collaborative research with Anne, where they focus on palliative care, the well-being of people who work in palliative care, and bereavement. David is open about his personal growth and how his flexibility and perspectives have evolved and grown over his life and career. I was so keen to have both Anne and David on the podcast, as palliative care and grief will undoubtedly touch so many people, if not all people, in the workplace, and the website is a brilliant resource. For those of you who are new to People Soup, welcome. It's great to have you here. We aim to provide you with the ingredients for a better work life, from behavioural science and beyond. For those of you who are regular Peace Supers, thanks for tuning in again. We love it that you're part of our community. Let's scoot over to the news desk. Firstly, those with heightened noticing skills will have spotted there's been a mid-season break. This was a combination of work and life events, which gave rise to an unplanned breakette. I'd like to give a special shout out to Peace Super Catherine G, and say thanks again for checking in and for your support. It's always such a boost to get a message from a listener, and I'm delighted to be back. In other news, the first cohort of my small group supervision programme for those applying ACT in the workplace has concluded with very positive feedback. There will be more cohorts after summer, and I'm in the planning stage at the moment. So let's crack on. For now, get a brew on and have a listen to my chat with David Gillanders. David, I'm going to share with you what my research department came up with. It's a brief extract, and then we'll do a bit of a deeper dive to get to know you a bit better. Cool. So it says here, David, Dr. David Gillanders is a chartered clinical psychologist and senior lecturer at the University of Edinburgh. His research programme explores psychological well-being in advanced illness, cancer and persistent health problems. And that's one aspect of your research interest. But my research department also noticed that your skills are not only psychological. We've heard that you were recently competing in the Scottish National Karate Championships. And in your category, you were placed bronze in kata and gold for kumite. Now, excuse my pronunciation there, but is that correct?
That's right, Ross. Yeah, I did compete at the JKA National Scottish Championships. So kata is particular forms of karate where you're doing a sequence of movements, imagining as if you're fighting multiple opponents at once, and you're graded according to, there's not an actual opponent there, but you're kind of doing it, and you're graded by the judges according to how well you do the particular form. So that's kata. I got bronze. And then kumite is actual fighting. It's not, you're not trying to hurt someone, but it is contact. It's a contact sport. And in my over 40s category, I won the gold medal. So I was really, really pleased and quite surprised about that, because I didn't expect even to get into the finals. So yeah, I was really pleased.
Yeah, well, hats off to you. And I wonder if those skills come in useful in your role at the uni.
In a way, yes. You know, I'm not going around beating up colleagues or students or anything like that. But I think when you get up on it's called the tatami, the mat, when you get up to do that, your heart is racing and you're, frankly, quite terrified. And you're deliberately putting yourself in that situation on purpose. And so I think when you have been in that situation and you come through it, you then kind of realize that stressful situations that happen at work, difficult meetings, I'm used to my heart racing. I'm used to having butterflies in my stomach. This doesn't have to be too overwhelming, So I think that part applies. And just keeping on breathing, trying to relax, trying to notice, am I holding myself unnecessarily tense, that kind of thing. So,
Lovely, thank you. Now, David, I wonder if you could expand a bit on your career history. Tell us some things that happened along the way, maybe some pivotal moments, if you will.
sure. So I did a clinical psychology training, and I'll be honest with you, a little bit like Anne, in my school, they didn't do psychology at A level. So I didn't really know anything about psychology at all. But I was very interested in what makes people tick and why people do the things that they do, and particularly interested in how we understand the mind. So I'd done A level, one of my A levels was English literature, and as part of that, I read Ian Banks's The Bridge. It's a novel, and it's a novel
Mm.
about a person who is in a serious car accident and then is in a coma. And it uses this coma journey to explore different aspects of his mind, his unconscious, conscious, ego, etc. And so I was studying this book for English literature, and as a result of that, then was introduced to a book, like a popular psychology book about Freud, as a way of understanding what Banks was writing. And I thought, this is really intriguing, how we understand the mind. And so that then led me to apply for psychology. I did this course, the program, the undergraduate program at City University, which I know, Ross, you have a connection with. So
Absolutely.
I was a graduate of City University. But coming towards the end of the degree, I had no clue what I wanted to do. For me, being at university was just, that was it in itself. I never had a plan as such. So I went to the careers counsellor and said, look, I'm really worried. People keep asking me what I'm going to do at the end of this degree, and I've no idea. And this career counsellor, said to me, well, is there anything you think you might like to do? And I said, well, some of my friends on the course, on the program, they're saying they want to do clinical psychology. I don't even really know what that is. And this counsellor said to me, well, why don't next time someone asks you what you want to do after the degree, just say, oh, I'm thinking of doing clinical psychology. And if you change your mind, no one's going to mind. And I said, all right, I'll try that. So the next time someone asked me, like, what are you going to do after your degree? I think it was probably one of my parents' friends. And I said, oh, I'm thinking of clinical psychology. And they went, oh, that's great. And then they moved on. And I probably said it two or three times. And
Mm.
cognitive dissonance being what it is, I then started to look around. Well, how do you get into this? How do you do it? And I started to find out and apply for assistant psychology jobs. And I literally applied for 100 jobs back then, and finally got an interview and was offered the job over in Cumbria in the South Lake District. I kind of worked in a community learning disability team and in a pain management program over in between Kendal in Cumbria and Barrow in Furness. And then I moved to Glasgow and worked as an assistant psychologist in the older adult service. And I think had I not been able to do it or enjoy it, then I would have known pretty quickly. But I felt like actually this is something I can do. I enjoy this. And then I got on the program at Glasgow University and got my postgraduate doctorate in clinical psychology. But I always knew all throughout that thing that what really fascinates me is how do we understand, what's the models that we use? What are the different theories that we use to understand people's thinking, people's behavior, how they interact? And so I was always interested in that aspect of it as the sort of theoretical, side as well as the kind of application side. And then I got this job came up in Edinburgh University back in 2004. I applied for it, got that job. It was part-time. The other 2 days a week was I got a job in the pain management service at Edinburgh. And yeah, so just last year, I got an award from the university for being at the university for 20 years, which was something else. And so after I'd kind of come to Edinburgh, I went to a division of health psychology event, and Lance McCracken was there, and he had a title of
Oh,
his
yeah.
talk was "Catching the Third Wave in Cognitive Behavior Therapy," and I'd never heard of this before. So this would be around about December 2004. And I thought, this is interesting. And so then I went and got the 1999 ACT book on the basis of that talk and thought, there's something in this that's really of interest to me. And then in 2006, I went for a visit down in the Bath pain management program that's entirely ACT based. And then that year, 2006, in the summer, there was the ACBS World Conference in London. And that really was a pivotal moment for me. I went to a pre-conference workshop that was delivered by Sonia Batten, and it absolutely blew my mind. Just this sense in which the psychology could be something that you could use with yourself, that you could embody yourself, that you could use that not just as something that you do at work, but it actually can be, a philosophy, a lifestyle. That was for me fairly radical. And from then, that's then when I really started to get into ACT and did more ACT training and et cetera, et cetera. And then around about, yeah, this event that Anne's talking about in 2014, that was the Palliative Care Congress down in Harrogate. And I'd been asked to go and do that by a guy called Mike Osborne, who was mindfulness practitioner, palliative care doctor. And he said, "Oh, I hear you're doing ACT. Can you come and do a talk?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do ACT, but I don't know anything about cancer or palliative care." I said, "Can I bring a friend?" So, so I contacted Ray, who I knew not well, but knew, and he and I agreed we'd do this together. And as Anne said, it was a little bit off in a sort of a room off from the main congress, and it got to the time of the beginning of the talk of the workshop, and no one was there. And Ray and I think, oh, this is just going to be us two and plus, two or three people. But then people started to kind of come, and they were starting to say, oh, it's just the plenary overran, and it started to fill and fill and fill, and eventually, like, the room was standing room only. It was like absolutely packed. So Ray and I did this talk, and it went really well, and enjoyed it. And then came back up to Edinburgh, and Anne, who was working at the Marie Curie Hospice in Edinburgh, invited me to come there and do a talk. And the people at the hospice seemed to like it. And I had been doing ACT training across the UK at that time, and noticed that a number of people in the ACT workshops I was delivering actually were saying to me that they worked in oncology and worked in palliative care. And I thought, this is good, because people in palliative care and oncology are interested in ACT, but there's actually very little in the way of evidence, whereas there's a lot of evidence in chronic pain and the work that I had been doing at the time. So I made a quite a deliberate shift. I asked for the university to provide a small amount of money, and we got this kind of network impact knowledge exchange grant of only about £3,000. And what that did was it brought people who I had met through ACT training, who I knew worked in oncology and palliative care, to come to Edinburgh. And we basically did it 2 days in 2015 that was like skill sharing and how do you work in this space and what are the important questions in this space. Through that, we met the team, Nick Hulbert-Williams and Brooke Swash. We put together a small grant application to Macmillan. We got money to do this Beaches trial, which was about how do people adjust to palliative care in the initial time. And I was the trial therapist in that trial. So that was 2016-17 or so. And then on the back of that, we applied to Marie Curie, got this money for Restore, a staff wellbeing intervention for palliative care. That was with Anne as well. And then we got this money from Marie Curie again for My Grief, My Way, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And then the big grant that we had that Anne and I have got recently is a randomized control trial that we're currently doing, which is about staff well-being in palliative care, and we're going to recruit over 300 staff across 30 different hospices, randomizing them to an ACT-based condition or just support as usual. And so that's an NIHR grant, and so it has literally grown from £3,000 to 1.4 million through the work that Anne and I have done, and we're a really good team. We work together and complement each other's skill sets. So that is how we got through ACT to palliative care.
Wow, thanks for sharing that journey. It's so interesting to see how it's developed in quite a short time
Yeah,
scale.
yeah.
And that latest, I didn't know. That's phenomenal that you're supporting the staff who work in palliative care.
Yeah.
We need to look after the carers.
Absolutely we do.
I was just really struck, David, by your careers counsellor. That feels like a really sliding doors moment
Yeah.
when they said, why don't you just say
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
And then when you tried it out, everyone just went, all right. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that sort of...
Well, it's so radical, isn't it? It's kind of slightly unthought through, but actually it really worked.
Well, it kind of worked out all
Yeah.
right, eh?
Seems to be going okay so
Yeah.
far.
Oh, that's superb. And once you discovered ACT with Lance, have you found an impact in your own life of applying ACT to yourself?
Absolutely, especially after that workshop with Sonia Batten in 2006. That was really where it started really growing a lot. So I think if you had met me back in the late 90s, early 2000s, you'd meet a very different person. Like I was really quite rigid and a little bit, certainly my inner voice was pretty toxic. And a process, I think, of which ACT is a strong part, has really helped me to take perspective on that story and to be more open and more open to other people and a bit more connected with people. I was really quite narrow and found other people quite painful, and so would not want to be around other people a lot. And people find that a bit surprising because they know me as the person who goes to karaoke or will sing or is in a band or all this kind of stuff. But actually, that's has come later, I think. So that's the one of the major ways that I remember first hearing about self-compassion and people talking kindly and giving themselves what they need. And to me, that was like, do people actually do that? Is that a thing? And I couldn't believe it, at that time. And then just gradually I've got more used to being able to be kinder towards myself. The bit for the model, Anne was saying this before about how she said, oh, I'd like to do a bit more mindfulness. But for me, the bit of the model for me that is the chink in the armor, the Achilles heel, is the committed action process. That I still find it. There's things that I want to do around things like exercising, looking after not eating too many biscuits and chocolate and that kind of stuff, all in that committed action zone. And everything else is fine, but that's where it slips for me. I find it very difficult to be consistent about those kind of behavioral changes. So that would be the bit that I would currently struggle with a bit.
I'm struck by your work together as a team, you and Anne, and something I notice in both of you. I don't know whether this is right, but I see this desire to make a difference. Would you say that was one of your values? I can see Anne's nodding. Sorry, I forgot to ask you that question, Anne. But would you see that as one of your core values or core drivers?
Definitely, to be helpful, to be useful, to make a difference in the world. Definitely, that has become a value for me. I think way back when I was doing my clinical training, it was always there that I wanted my work to be something practical and to be of benefit, but it wasn't quite as crystallized as that kind of value statement of to be useful, to make a difference. That's definitely grown.
And there's a value I see there, David, of courage. Just thinking, I can take this shift, I can intentionally make this shift to palliative care to increase the research base there, and I can go for some big ass grants.
It definitely has come later in life for me, that whole thing. I think, my story about university, I think shows that I never had a plan, really. Like all the way through, like in fact, even getting my job at Edinburgh and even, like it was all kind of opportunistic and, oh, there's an opportunity, I'll go for that. There was never really a sense of like, right, what we have to do is this and then this and then this. And it's not until, that grant back in 2015, bringing people together where I started to think, right, actually, oh, we could do something quite purposeful and deliberate about this. And then, you meet the right people. Anne, for example, Nick, Brooke, Juliet Spiller, who's one of the consultants at the Marie Curie Hospice in Edinburgh. Each of these people who sort of like nudge it along a little bit. And then you look back on it and it looks like a very sort of planned and carefully orchestrated trajectory, and it really hasn't been like that at all. It's been more like, right, we'll do this, we'll take this opportunity. That worked out well, and we'll take this opportunity. I guess what we haven't talked about is that along the way there's been a number of grant applications that have been unsuccessful, which, every academic has that. So,
Yeah, it's important to be clear about that. And I like a squiggly trajectory.
yeah.
I like one that emerges and you're aware of what's happening, and then you can adjust the trajectory and set your sights on what's next. So David, if you were giving advice to your younger self back at school, what words of advice might you have for young David?
Well, so I thought about this, and I'm very into my sci-fi books, and as a result of that, I know this whole aspect about time travel and paradox and the butterfly effect, and I've been on quite a journey, but actually, if I could go back, would I change anything? I don't think I would, because I think where I am now is good, and even a tiny change back then might, if I was a more motivated person back then, if I was more directed, if I had more of a plan, would I have got to where I've got now? Probably not. Um, and so whilst I probably wouldn't change much, I might even sort of go around the corner and hide from my younger self so that I didn't influence them. But if I had to, if I was forced to, I would say something like, this person that you think you are, who smokes and is into the theatre and thinks that that whole side of life is all about what it's all about. Don't forget that exercising and moving your body is really important. That's probably the advice I have to give.
Nice. I like that. And it's the song choice
Yeah.
question, David. So, a song to announce your arrival for the next 2 or 3 months. Have you got one in mind, and why have you chosen it?
So it's funny. I love music, but I'm quite faddish, and so what'll happen for me, I've got core music that I love, and then what'll happen is I'll hear a song and I'll become obsessed with it, and I'll play it over and over and over. And at the moment, the song that has jumped out is actually, I think about 6 months old, is this song called APT by Bruno Mars and Rose, and it's just completely pop, has no specific profound meaning, but I'm totally in love with it right now. So that song would be the one for now. And then probably in a couple of weeks' time, it'll be something different.
I love it. I get those sort of song
Yeah.
manias, but I'm not that up to date with the hit parade that I know the one you're talking about.
Well, the funny thing about that is I said to my kids who are, at 16 and 14 and 9, and I said, oh, I've heard this amazing song on the radio. I've heard this like brilliant song, and they were like, Dad, that's been out about 6 months.
Oh,
I
Dad.
know, right?
Brilliant. David, thanks so much for sharing a bit more about your background and your journey. I'm not sure I like that word, but your journey into where you've got to.
You're welcome.
That's it, folks. My chat with David in the bag. Next week, I'll be talking to both Anne and David about their website, mygriefmyway.co.uk. You'll find the show notes for this episode at peoplesoup.captivate.fm or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like this episode, we'd love it if you told us why. You can email at peoplesoup.pod@gmail.com. On the socials, I'm still posting on Instagram at people.soup. And I'm on LinkedIn too, as well as a new account on Blue Sky. Just search for my name. Now more than ever, you can help me reach more people with the special People Soup ingredients, stuff that could be really useful for them. So please do share, subscribe, rate and review. Thanks to Andy Glenn for his spoon magic and Alex Engelberg for his vocals. But most of all, dear listener, thanks to you. Look after yourselves, pea soupers, and bye for now. One thing I haven't checked yet, which was, I want to check I'm pronouncing your surnames correctly. I've got Gillanders.
Perfect.
Is that the right
It is,
emphasis?
yeah.
And Finucane.
That's right, Finucane. That's right.
For the win.